So if we stand at the podium when you speak, be sure you press that button.
Which button?
This push button. It's
the
a
push button.
one four-letter word that says push.
That's the one. Works every time.
Gina, we're going to go ahead and get started. I don't? Okay. Okay, we don't have to touch it. My bad. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming out today. We want you to be sure that you sign up on the sign-up sheet so that we can correspond with you. We have your correct address and everything for future corresponding. This is just an informal meeting to communicate with the people who live along West Central Avenue, so you know what's going on with this project. It's going to kick off big time this summer. I'm going to let Chris Murphy take the microphone. He is with Structure Point. He's going to introduce the members of the team that are with him today. And then we want you to ask questions. We want you to know what all these drawings mean by the time you leave here. And always, always, we want you to ask questions if you have any concerns or anything. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Chris.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Chris Murphy with Structure Point, principal in charge of this project in the region. And I want to go over, introduce the team members that are here with me tonight working on this project for the city of Portage. First off is Greg Lorig. Greg is the project manager and chief designer on this project, and he'll be able to answer most of your detailed questions as he's put together all the details on this project so far. Next to him is Eric Wolverton. He's the chief engineer of our Maryville office here in Northwest Indiana, and he works day to day with Greg on the details on this project, and so he'll be available with answers to any questions that you have also. And then sitting in the second to last back row, there's John Kennedy. He's in charge of refreshments here at the meeting. There is some bottled water out at the front door in case you get thirsty, discussing the details with Eric and Greg on the project. John, I work with John every day on the communities that we work in, and he does a great job. I appreciate it. The mayor mentioned up front we have a clipboard with a sign-in sheet on it for anyone who's interested in receiving any update information on the project as we move forward. Please take advantage of that if you're interested in doing that. Just briefly, where we are on the project development. As you may have noticed, there has been work ongoing out there since last summer, mostly to make way for utilities to relocate their power lines, their overhead power lines, gas lines, any water that needed to be relocated so that they are clear of the improvements that we're planning on building out there at this portion of Central Avenue. I want to tell you today that most of that utility relocation work has been taken care of. So as the weather changes, which it did today, I expect that the actual road and bridge construction will start in earnest here very shortly, if they haven't been out there already yet today, starting that work. So all this summer and through till next year, you'll see construction on this section of Central Avenue. And I know I've spoken to some of you that this has been an ongoing project for quite some time. So it was really a thrill for me to actually see construction getting started on it. It's the best part of my job when we get to the day when we can all be out there and actually cut the ribbon on the improvement that is actually built and bring benefit and value to the community for the next 50 years plus. So with that, I'm going to ask Greg to go over some of the details of the project, and then we'll just open it up for discussion at each one of the stations.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I won't get into too many of the details. I think it'd probably be more beneficial, like Chris alluded to, speaking to you all individually at the different boards. But just to kind of summarize a couple things that are on the boards out here right now. So what you see on the aerial exhibits is what kind of constitutes phase 1 and phase 2 of the project. So the construction that Chris was alluding to getting started currently, and this construction season is phase 1. So that's primarily going to be the new bridge over Willow Creek, which is being relocated a little bit northwest of the existing bridge. Then there'll also be some approach work for the roadways on each side of the bridge that will tie it back into existing Central Avenue. That is slated to be substantially complete the end of this year. There will be some restoration and tree plantings and so forth that'll go into next year. Phase 2 is kind of the balance of what's shown on that exhibit. So starting at approximately Brant Street, just west of Willowdale, continuing up to where phase 1 ends, just east of Willowdale, and then it'll pick up just east of the bridge and where Eric's pointing to all the remainder of the balance up to Peach Street, and then some work on Sand Avenue and Willowdale Road will all be starting next calendar year. Just a little bit of background about the kind of purpose and need of the project. There's a few things. Vehicular safety, as Eric can probably point to, probably the most significant thing you'll see what's changing is really the horizontal curves on Central Avenue. Existing curves that are out there just not meeting standard NDOT and AASHTO requirements. So we're improving vehicular safety, we're adding sidewalks out there. We'll also be adding curb and gutter, and storm sewer, detention ponds. So where we really have very minimal drainage or storm sewers out there now, that'll all be improved with curb and gutters and storm sewers. So public safety, pedestrian safety, drainage are big keys for this project. With that, I really don't have anything much additional to say. Hopefully that was kind of a good summary, but again, it's kind of meant to be an informal open house, and all the project team members here are happy to answer any specific questions with people at the boards.
Greg, give them a run through of the typical section, just so they understand how.
Yeah, thanks, John. So the other board is basically two typical sections. So that would be if you're kind of looking sideways down the roadway, if you're standing out on the road. We have two typical sections shown. One is from Brant Street to Willowdale Road. So really not a huge section of the project necessarily, but that's a section where we have the sidewalks pretty much right behind the curb and gutter. Versus once we get east of Willowdale Road, we do have a 8-foot wide sidewalk on the west side of the road with a grass buffer in between it. On the south side of the road next to the cemetery, we don't have a sidewalk on that side. We're really trying to minimize any impacts with the property, with the cemetery. So that's kind of what those represent. There's some lines showing approximately where the right-of-way is. So it's kind of just a snapshot of, in most locations along the plan view, this is what the section of the road will look like. So I think with that, unless Eric has anything to add, I think we'll probably just spread out at the boards and be happy to answer any questions from anyone here.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add real quick is that the city's been very successful in leveraging this project at NERC, our local NPO, for federal dollars. So as everything you see here, whether it's in terms of some engineering, right-of-way, construction, the required construction and inspection, is all going to be covered at 80% by federal funds, where the city is only required to pay 20% of those. So I did want to make that point.
You've been on it since the beginning, haven't you?
I have, Mayor, and, yeah, I hope you people have a couple hours because it'll. This project got started under the administration of Mayor Olga back in the day. It received some federal funding from Congressman Visklosky at the time to complete the feasibility study, the planning study, and the environmental documentation necessary to qualify the project for additional federal funding. So we worked on the environmental documentation and the feasibility study. We had that approved. We had held a public hearing at the middle school some time ago, 10 years or so ago at this point in time, and exhausted the congressman's funding while we qualified the project for additional federal funds. In the interim of several mayoral administrations, the priority for this project came and went at several times. The scope of work changed a couple of times. As some of you might recall, originally the project included some roundabout intersection improvements, which are no longer involved by the project. They take up additional right-of-way land needed for intersection improvements versus just a regular intersection. Mayor Lynch's administration has been very diligent about getting this project on the federal funding radar over at NERC. She spends time over there at the meetings, spends time with the congressman, and we now have 80% federal funding, as Eric noted, not only to complete this work, but the congressman has already committed additional federal funds for future phases of the project, which will eventually complete the improvement from County Line Road, Central Avenue and County Line Road, to the intersection of Central Avenue and Willow Creek Road. It'll take several years of construction as the funding comes through NERC and the congressman's office to complete that entire stretch. But that's the commitment that the mayor's committed to, and so we at Structure Point are working with her to follow through on that commitment with both NERC and the congressman's office, and we intend to continue to do that. Any other questions about the history of the project, Mayor?
Question from Facebook that ties into what you're talking about.
Sure.
So not this phase or section, but do you foresee a need for acquiring more right-of-way for future phases and improvements as the project moves west of the county line? If so, when and how will residents be notified?
Yes, there will need to be additional right-of-way acquired, and primarily, it will be property acquired that is located under the current pavement of Central Avenue. In other words, the apparent right-of-way lines were never documented in the past with the recorder's office, and because we're using federal highway funds on this project, they require that we actually have documentation that the property, the land that we're building the improvements on is actually right-of-way owned by the city. So in most cases, property owners will not experience any additional land being taken over what they believe is their right-of-way line in front of their house. It'll primarily be land that extends from the apparent right-of-way line underneath the pavement under Central Avenue. All of that will be coordinated with the property owners as we get to that phase of the project. Each one of these additional phases will require some additional environmental documentation, and at that point in time, we will define exactly how many properties are involved and who the properties owners are that will have to be contacted and work through that process. Very good. Any other questions I can answer while I'm standing here at the podium before I adjourn to my station?
So you're just gonna have us come up there and?
Sure, yeah, and that way,
General question I would ask though, okay, just a couple, because we have some of the council people here too, okay? Sidewalk access from Swanson Road to the new walkway. Right, is there going to be something, there's a lot of foot traffic that comes down Swanson Road and basically going to the dairy dip.
mhm.
Okay, I mean, it's a route, there's bicycles, there's kids on the side of the road all the time. I don't see anything in there that gets us a sidewalk to get to the walking trail, that's one concern. What are we gonna do when we start construction and we got all these semis driving down Swanson Road? It gets worse every day, we've got at least 12 to 20 semis,
Somebody's
40
up and down
foot trucks,
Swanson Road right now.
driving through his yard, cutting the corner, and it just gets worse. Somehow they've got their Google Maps, or whatever they drive, is taking them right down Swanson Road that's not designed for these trucks to even be on. So, once we start construction in there, and we start sending these semi trucks through there, it's already a nightmare for those of us that live there and gotta deal with it.
Sure,
But it's gonna be worse when we start adding some construction stuff over there.
sure.
And finally, just my immediate neighbor stuff we talk about, the green spaces that are gonna be created between Sand and Central Avenue. Will those always be green spaces, or are they gonna be parks, or what are we gonna do with these newly created areas in there? I understand you can't sell them because you bought it with federal property, so we're not gonna have a gas station there, thank goodness, but what are we gonna do with this? I mean, it could be really nice, this green space that's in there, if we dress it up with, do something. Maybe we'll get one day the parade going back down through there, and it could be a great spot for.
Sure. Appreciate the questions, good questions. I'm going to ask Greg to go over the sidewalk question, because we have taken that into account through the limits of the project. And I'll also ask Greg to go over maintenance of traffic on this project during construction, so that I'm not sure we can do anything about the truck traffic that's currently using Swanson Road, but we can make sure that the trucks can move through the construction area while the project is under construction.
They need to get off Swanson Road, that's why I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, we need off.
From my council people, it just gets worse and worse, it's like a through.
I can't understand why they go on Swanson Road to
I
begin
don't
with.
know.
But that being said,
Dan, it's likely a no truck road to begin with, right? So it's an enforcement.
It was never designed for.
So my question is, are you saying that the truck traffic is, you don't think it's particular to this project? We have truck issues, just general, for some reason they're using that.
Yes,
improper.
because they know they 50
Well,
per foot
Sure,
trucks
is that
are
Yeah,
coming
These are not,
off of
these
Central
aren't
and
local
turning on
delivery
Swanson.
trucks, these are cutting through
Where
our
are they
city
going?
to get to Route
going up
6.
to Route 20.
They go from 20, Swanson, to Willow Creek to 6.
Dan, it's because they know they can't use Willow Creek.
Yeah, so
They
I think-
enforce it at the toll road,
So now they
so they
found,
avoid it by going down.
now they found Swanson Road as their
Yeah.
other route.
It's an enforcement issue, and I think we just need to step up enforcement, period.
It gets worse, there's more and more all the time.
Because we've invested
It's
so
at
much.
2 o'clock in the
They know where
afternoon.
we're enforcing it, and we're
Well,
enforcing
we
it.
just paved that road,
I
so
mean,
it's going to,
you take your time,
make a mess
your
out
watch
of
to
it.
it.
You
It's
don't
all like
touch
yours,
it.
it's not.
Point well made, we'll make it.
Everybody's talking about it.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
well, my question is I live there on the corner, and people cut through my yard, cut through my driveway and everything going to the dairy dip, which I have no objection to that. The alternative is not a good idea. Well, but they cut through. Now, I'll be at the corner of Swanson and what is it, maybe Sand Avenue then, I guess. But across that green area there, I would suggest that there's a sidewalk or a walkway at the end of that street at the cul-de-sac where the turnaround is, because otherwise you're going to have a walkway across that green area. They will be a path across there and it'll look like crap. Unless it's designated, hey, go to the sidewalk. You understand what I mean? They will cut across.
Yeah, let me ask Greg to go over the sidewalk details that we're going to be building in this project and including in future phases. I did want to make a comment with regard to the space that's left after we relocate the alignment of the road to build the new bridge and the safer horizontal alignment. That property will be city property. The project itself is going to leave it, green with grass planting and maybe we have some trees out there. I'm not sure if we're including any trees out there. But certainly there is opportunity for the city to follow through on additional improvements out there as that might fit with the city's parks plan or other improvements.
With all due respect, I don't recommend trees in that green space because every year I have a car that hits the pole that's in front of my house. The
Okay.
city pole and light structure that is there, every year I'm guaranteed a car to hit the pole. No matter what the weather is, rain, sunshine, it doesn't matter what time of day either.
Okay.
You're in competition with these mailboxes.
These mail trucks and my pole is every year.
Okay,
I forgot that we've all talked about the lighting in this new Sand Central, Swanson areas. Are street lights gonna go in there or
there'll be some lighting.
something we
Okay.
talked about?
I'll try to do my best to answer the various questions. I was trying to take notes so you guys can remind me if I forgot any here. As far as the sidewalks on Swanson and Sand go, those are local streets, and typically with federal funding, you only get federal share on streets that meet a certain classification of roadway with more traffic. That's why those are not included currently, and we're not within the original environmental documentation. That being said, all of the right-of-way that's being purchased for the city, like Chris alluded to, the city will own that, and that will be an opportunity that can be done with local funds by the city. As far as the green space between Sand Avenue and the relocated Central Avenue, that is something we've talked with city staff, like AJ Monroe and Sandy, that there is going to be opportunity there for something. I mean, it's basically a blank canvas right now, so as part of our project right now, we're just planning on sodding anything that's disturbed with the roadway, but there's certainly opportunity for the city if they wanted to look at doing park facilities or specific type of plantings as far as trees or what have you. I know the gentleman in the back suggested he would prefer not trees. So it hasn't been a big focus of the project, but it is something that we've talked about in the planning. So I think there's opportunity for those two things in the future.
But am I right when I say that that property can't be resold to like a business or something, since it was acquired with federal money?
As far as the public right-of-way, no, but I think a lot of that portion of the project, like where the old fire station was actually parcel already owned by the city. So the city would basically have control of that green space, whether they keep it.
Don't want to see a tattoo shop or 7-Eleven or a gas station or something, in that spot.
Okay.
Yeah, all the conversations, all have the idea that is going to bring some form of open space, green space, recreational something.
Nice.
But at least it ain't gonna go to a 7-Eleven.
No, it's not.
That's
It's,
what we want to see.
I
it's,
don't wanna look at
So
that
right
right
away,
7-Eleven.
cuts through, right?
it's going to remain in the
Should be
city.
able to sell right.
Theoretically, it could be subdivided later, but yes, with it all being public right-of-way right now, I would expect, yeah. public use, public improvements, green space.
Let's put a tall building.
And between the two cemeteries, are they taking, there was two different, at the beginning, they were gonna just take the front across from Countryside Auto, just through the driveway. Now, it's been said that they're gonna take the entire business and put in a drainage ditch. And I was wondering why a drainage ditch would be necessary when there's like 7 drainage already into the ground, draining into the creek.
The property is planned for a detention basin. So kind of, Chris had alluded to it. The future phase will actually extend all the way to County Line Road.
Back there, there's a creek, and there's been no flooding.
And
whatever.
so the purpose is for detention basin, so when the road is widened a little bit to put in curb and gutters and sidewalks are added, it will generate additional stormwater runoff, which would increase peak flow rates to the creek, just like if a development would come into a green space. So that parcel has been identified as a location for detention basin to accommodate runoff.
I mean, to take the entire business for that, with eminent domain, I thought you only took a portion of what was necessary to make the street wider or whatever. I mean, they're taking the entire business all the way back to the creek. I wonder why they need to do that when nobody else's property. My son owns that business 23 years, and they want him out, lock, stock, and barrel, by May 15th. May 15th, that's what they want him out. I mean, regardless of how anybody may appear to look at that place, he's put 23 years of his life in there. And they told him at the beginning, the 2 people that represented the company, that he could keep the back part, keep the building, and have it, and they even talked about a new road going into the building. And he spent a lot of money putting all those drains in. There's a catch basin back there and everything. And I'd like to have an answer, because that's a lot of pressure on my son and my family.
Yeah, I can't really say much more than I already did, that is for stormwater purposes, to accommodate.
All that, I mean, I don't understand how you can, I mean, his livelihood is gone. He's been there 23 years, and they want him out by May 15th. I mean, I don't get the compassion that anybody, I mean, you don't need that. I mean, is that building being built like a city or a federal?
There would be federal funds associated with the right-of-way.
It's a city money going into that building? Because I've been told by other people that they're going to keep that building here. It's a 2-bay brick building, and use that building, because there's really no reason. I mean, we're going to put a park back there. I mean, we're not talking across the 2 graveyards. And they said I've been told that they're going to keep that building and use it for the city. I mean, and the offer they've given him for that is not even the price of an average home in Portage. An average home probably costs $240. They're not too far off that, but they want to offer him, after 23 years, 2 bays, brick, probably 3 acres there. I mean, he couldn't even buy a house probably for what they're offering him. And they want him out by May 15th. I don't get that. I don't know anybody in here that would be too happy to hear that, if it were their business.
Sounds harsh.
Extremely harsh.
Sounds harsh to me.
I don't have a whole lot to add, other than that it is not unique to this project where additional land is secured for stormwater
Is
purposes.
the city buying that building, or they have funds in that building? Because I want to know if the city's going to use and keep. Why would you want to tear down a brick building, all steel brick, 2 bays in there? And I mean, I can see the city using that. I mean, the people that were there at the beginning, and even after, the next people that came in there and spoke with him, must have been in October, because he hasn't been able to, he has not wanted to improve anyway for years, because like you said, this thing's been going on for years. I mean, he was gonna do the lot over, he was gonna do a paving over, he's gonna do this, that, and other. But when you're sitting in limbo for years, it's kind of hard to go forward, and he's a pretty much one-man show down there. So I wanna know if the city's gonna keep that building and use it, and they're gonna offer him money that he couldn't go down to the part in Portage and buy a house. I'd like to have some, he couldn't be here tonight, but it's very upsetting to, our family. But he won't have it, I mean, after, he's in his mid-50s, what's he gonna do after he's been doing that all his life? Not that I really wanted him to do that, but that's where it is.
Understand your concerns. Two things that I want to know. One is, we don't know what the intentions are of the city with regard to the future of that property. What Greg was noted is what we do know is that the additional stormwater that this project will add to Willow Creek, it will potentially cause flooding downstream of Willow Creek, which is why we've installed this detention facility to hold the stormwater so it'll keep Willow Creek from flooding downstream. In the land acquisition process, there should be an appraisal that's completed with regard to the value of the property that the city's acquiring from you, your son.
We've got that appraisal.
Okay,
We have
all right.
some employees for that kind of
Okay, all right. And there is opportunity for you and your son to secure your own appraisal of the property if you don't agree with the appraisal that's completed as part of our project.
That's not exactly true, because we got an attorney, and now the attorney went through quite a bit of information and sent it to the city. And now the city, like they told us before we even got the attorney, that they're going to, the judge is going to give hire three appraisals, and whatever they come up with, Michael's gonna have to take it. So obviously, and he's gonna have to give a big chunk to that attorney he had to hire, which, I guess that's the way it is. But the point is, I mean, we've had, at the beginning, they told us that he could keep that building, and he could have a driveway going up that one side. And, I mean, they're taking, not only the sidewalk, the entire parking lot, now the building and all, he spent $1,000 to have it all paved in the back, and had drainage ditches put in there, the drainage has got 7 of them in there. And then he wouldn't even have a job. I don't have anything to do with it, I don't even live in Indiana. My point is, he couldn't be here tonight, and I just think that, first year out of college, I taught here at Portage. That's not a big prime property, in my opinion, like 2 acres. You can have that go straight and still let him keep his building in the back. And as far as drainage, he's been there 23 years, there's never been, I've never seen it flood ever, we've had some rebounds on drains.
So a couple of things. One is, because it's federally backed partially project, we do have to have adequate plans to deal with the additional impervious water and stormwater drain off that the road improvements will create. But to the other side of that, it does work with appraisals. We don't sort of arbitrarily come up with a figure. That's not how eminent domain works. And depending on the project, it could be a partial taking, it could be a complete taking. It depends on, the plans of the project and what's really the best route. And you're right, the way it works is, the city gets an appraisal. If the homeowner doesn't agree with that, they can come up with their own number. The problem is, since it's federally backed to some large extent, we can't just arbitrarily go above the appraisal. The federal government won't let us do that. We would lose the federal funding to do that. So for example, if the city said the piece of property is worth $200,000 and the homeowner said, no, I want $500, we get an appraisal that comes in at $200, we can't go above $200.
But see what.
Let me finish. Let me finish. So what happens then is you have sort of dueling appraisals. You go get your own appraisal. What I'm seeing happen with some of these, I'm not saying it's your son's property, but an attorney will get involved and they'll start gathering, instead of just getting an appraisal, they'll start gathering some comps. I've seen comps from Indianapolis, from St. John. Those they don't apply. And we have to have some justification to show the federal government, this is why we came up on our offer. To your point, what happens if we can't get justification for the higher amount? then it does end up going to court. We end up depositing money into the court. The judge will look at the doing appraisals, order their own appraisal, and will come up with a number. That's how eminent domain works in Indiana. So no one just sort of out of the, we will only want to give you this much. It doesn't.
That's not what I meant.
No, I was just
You
clarifying.
misunderstood.
No, I totally
We
understand
have-
what you mean. I'm just explaining to you the process.
I know the process. He came up, we have an attorney, we have 2 attorneys, and they have come up with a price, and within a day, they said, no way. They're not even, see, what I don't understand is they won't count it as a business. They don't count it as a business, is that correct, on the eminent domain? They're counting it only as a piece of property in a building.
It's
Well,
value.
it's comparable to a house then.
Not
I
necessarily.
don't understand that part, why it can't be compared to, it's the business part of it. They are counting it.
But again, to your point, when a lawyer gets involved on the other side and says, we think it's worth this much, if we don't have justification from our appraisal side, we can't come up.
Oh, I understand that.
So,
But it's like in Portage, there's not too many sold comparisons. They went to one in Gary, and they went to one in Hammond. They didn't go to Indianapolis or any other Valparaiso or any of those other cities. They just only just go.
Well, Hammond's a
Like
big
2,
one.
maybe 2 that they can compare with. And both of those were sold back in the pandemic time when everybody was practically giving their things away. So the comparison is what we're concerned about. There's several of them for sale.
right.
There's one for sale right down the road, not too far down into Lake Station. They want $700,000, which is not even, nothing, that's not sold. We understand the process. I'm just here to explain that I just feel like that they told us at the beginning, after years of waiting around to see what was gonna happen, that we could keep it going.
Well, and when you
now
get,
it's changed.
and when you get into the,
But they want him out by May 15th.
and when you get into the eminent domain process, by the way, when you get in front of a judge, I've seen folks argue that it's affecting business. It's a business, it should be valued this much. That's when all that comes out. So it will.
And I guess the communication thing is now, the city turned it down, they didn't want the offer, that his attorney wrote to the city. We haven't heard the news, nothing. We don't know if we should, there's no communication as far as, last letter my son received, they wanted him out May 15th. And they've had moving people over there, trying to get him, sign a paper that it's gonna cost about $100,000 to move everything. But the problem is, they want him to sign the paper that he's gonna move, but where do you move? He has nothing else to own. You can't just up and move all the items. And there's no communication to say, well, maybe we can give you another 90 days or something. There's nothing, and we're just waiting day in, day out. What's gonna happen? We know he's gonna have to leave because I'm assuming, once they make up their mind, they're gonna take it. But, he's lost about 30 pounds, my hair's turning gray, and it's getting a little out of hand. We need some communication because where does he take all these things? They said, well, have an auction. Well, yeah, you can have an auction, give everything away, and then you walk away with a very low offer, which is what's gonna happen, and all that anxiety, trying to get rid of all these things. And, the last, like I said, May 15th, it's the last we heard, he's gonna be out. So, that's kind of a lot to sleep on every night. You don't know where to go, what's gonna happen, he said, well, just move stuff, and then the jail moving on this stuff. That's exactly where it is right now, and I know you understand why I'm saying that.
Let me check on the relocation services that may be provided.
They are giving relocation.
Okay.
services, But where do you go?
Well,
Where do you go?
Yeah, there's,
He lives in a subdivision, where is he going with everything? Just even the personal items inside.
right, and there is some responsibility on the property owner to work with the relocation services to find
He has some time, we don't have much time. That's the thing, if he has more time, then we help.
So should we move to the boards?
Yeah, if there are no more other questions, we can take questions at the boards.
Ma'am, I understand your plight, but I think I want to move this meeting along a little bit because I don't think this is the group of people that can help you. These people that live in this corridor too are interested in knowing some more things about it, so not trying to cut you off. And I understand what you're saying, but I think that's a discussion we have to have away from this group of people because they're interested in learning some things too. But thank you for your input. So if you're here to look at the boards and you want to stand up, the guys will come around and will explain to you what's going on with the various boards.
You help me out, I help you out, right?
Yes.